Hey everyone, I'm Karma. I'm an analyst and a writer for CSGO, and this series is entitled Major Thoughts, where I discuss the upcoming major, which is Dreamhack Cluj. It's taking place in Cluj-Napoca, Romania, and basically I'm going to give my opinion on how the tournament should progress. Particularly today, we're going to have a look at the group stage. So we have 16 of the top teams in the world. Arguably, not all the best teams that we'd like to see are there, such as Hellraisers, for example, who are just on the outside of the top 10. But most of them are there, and each team that is there deserves to be there because they qualified. So the last major was won by probably the most legendary lineup in CSGO history, which is Fnatic, who currently look in bad shape, and because of this, there are some really great storylines to get into. But first, we're going to have a look at the group stage and the expected winners of the group, and maybe in another video, I'll go over some of the storylines. So, Group A has Fnatic, Luminosity Gaming, which is the Brazilian team, Cloud9, the North Americans, and Vexed Gaming, which is the Polish team. So, this is probably the second easiest group to predict, mainly because there is very little ambiguity around who will probably most likely make the top two and move on from this group. Even though Fnatic look in bad shape, they most definitely should move out of this group in either top seed or at the very least second top seed. Uh, Mainly due to their skill, experience, and past performances at majors and other tournaments. I'm pretty confident they'll make it out, and if they don't, I mean, this could possibly spell the downward trend of Fnatic, but I highly doubt it. So yeah, I expect Fnatic to make it. Cloud9 is probably my second pick. They should be the other team that theoretically should make it out of this group, mainly because in the third quarter of the year they had a great string of performances. And that combined with the fact that they're facing, Luminosity Gaming, yeah, they're a team that they play in their region quite often, so they should secure a win on that front. But I mean, it's going to be tough for them to beat Fnatic. I mean, that's their toughest task for sure. And I mean, both Cloud9 and Fnatic don't look too hot, so that game is really a 50-50 to me. I'd probably have to look at how Fnatic does against Vexed and then evaluate how Cloud9 should be against them. But I mean, as for taking on Vexed, Cloud9 should be able to just totally out aim them. They have the raw skill, the talent, the map pool that should just all fall in their favor. And yeah, as a result, you should see Cloud9 get the second top seed. Although I won't be surprised if Cloud9 don't make it out of the groups. I mean, they've looked quite poor lately, and Luminosity always seem to surprise at the majors and get that one leg ahead, whilst Cloud9 fall out in the group stage and are much more than they really should. So I mean, it's really a toss-up. I mean, Luminosity is the incredibly ambiguous team at this tournament. I mean, lately their online results have been poor. But that's mainly probably due to the fact that they're playing from a boot camp in Europe against, North American teams on North American servers, so they have high ping. And you can really tell that like Luminosity highly favors the major tournament over any kind of online results or any sort of tournaments in the NA region. They really focus on majors, mainly probably due to the prestige, but also the sticker money, which is important to the continual survival of their professional careers in CSGO. I mean, without that, they wouldn't probably have sponsor, they wouldn't have, sorry, not a sponsor, an organization. I mean, having yourself in the Legends capsule is a really big deal because you know that you're going to have like an extra, 100 to 200 grand possibly of sticker money that you can support your players on. And yeah, I think it just really speaks miles to what kinds of players they are. They really do value and see the big tournaments as the big tournaments. Although I do feel like Cloud9 is the more skilled lineup than Luminosity. I can't help but hop on the belief train that Luminosity is saving themselves for this tournament once again. You know, they have like a little ace up their sleeve. So I think they most definitely should place higher than Vexed, but beating Cloud9 is going to be really tough for them, and especially Fnatic too. But they have a good chance, Luminosity. They've always come out surprising me, so I'm hopping on that belief train. You know, they're my third seed or my second choice to, be second place in their group. Now, although Vexed, I have really discounted as the team that should place the lowest. Um, that's not to say that they're totally out of it. I mean, if Luminosity and Cloud9 don't really bring their best game and don't pick their maps wisely, Vex does like a really great shot at making it into the round of 8, and I would expect them really only to do so under those conditions. I mean, it would have to be Cloud9 and Luminosity picking really bad map in the end, off vetoes, and they would have to be playing like really poor. So, I mean, Vex has a shot, but against Fnatic's going to be tough. Against Cloud9, it's going to be hard, but not like out of the dimension of reality. Luminosity they have probably their best chance against. So yeah, Group B is TSM, G2 or Gamers2, Mouse Sports, and Flipside. And I'd hate to say it, but this is really the easiest group to predict. Mainly because TSM and Gamers2 have shown that there is a clear gap between themselves and the competition. I expected TSM and Gamers2 to make it out of this group, and I have full confidence in them to do so with such great online results and offline results this quarter of the year. But Gamers2, however, I have a lot of ambiguity about, particularly because Scream has left the lineup. He was such a high-profile player. And although the team has looked far better communication-wise, because they have Yakaim now, who is Norwegian, and Rain can communicate with him, there is still a lot of doubt as to how this new lineup will translate to at LAN. I mean, this is their first LAN together with Yakaim, and because of that, it's going to be incredibly tough to kind of gauge how they're going to play. And last time, they really got lucky beating Cloud9 to make it out of the groups, so yeah, I'm not too sure. Plus, their online results should post them a little bit ahead of Mouse Sports and Flipside, but perhaps those teams have surprises themselves. And, GobB and Blade are just both incredible in-game leaders that it's so hard to really say that G2's skill can, really push them over the line. Suffice to say, I mean, G2 definitely does have the more skilled players in Rain, Michaelele, Kame, and Dennis, who should be able to handle their opponents, but Mouse Sports do have a great opportunity and a real fire to fuel after their devastating performance at Cologne, where they looked to shoe in really to make it out of the groups, but they failed to do so. So I could say that basically if G2 doesn't show up and bring their A game, Mouse has a really great shot here at making it through, as they have really comparable skill in terms of when they're playing at their best. They could really bring it to Gamers 2, probably beat them quite easily in like a 16-10 kind of result. So yeah, they also have the online results, and those can be either argued or be compared to be seen as better or on par with Gamers 2. I mean, it's debatable depending on what like maps and opponents you're looking at, but I would have to say Mouse Sports have the better map pool, but G2 has the better skill. So yeah, I think if G2 don't bring their best, Mouse Sports and Mouse Sports do, sorry, that's it. That's it. It should be Mouse Sports taking the second seed. As for Flipside, I mean, they're a great team, no doubt. They're somewhere in the top 20 of the world. It's kind of hard to gauge like what part of the top 20 they're in, because sometimes they look like they're, almost outside of the top 10, and then other times they look like they're at the bottom end, like 18th, 19th in the world. unfortunately too, they've had like really poor online results lately, and their skill across their team is highly inconsistent. I mean, I could say that while Markelov, World Edit, and Blade have like lots of experience and they're really good LAN players, they merely just like don't have the skill to outperform anyone in this group. You know, there's not one player on that team that I could really say is better than anyone else out of this group. Like no one on flip side can really, I would say, dominate even anyone on G2. So I mean, yeah, they have a shot, but it's a really far one, and it feels like there's like a brick wall between them and their opponents. It's going to be incredibly hard for Flipside to even try and get out of this group. So we're going to move on to Group C now, which is by far, I would have to say, the hardest group to predict. I mean, every one of these teams has a shot of making it through. Mainly because all these teams can kind of beat one another and they all have the skill to do it. Yes, that does even include Liquid. So, Group C is comprised of the legendary Ninjas in Pajamas lineup, Virtus Pro, Titan, and the North American squad Team Liquid. Now, firstly, I would like to say that yes, by far, I expect Virtus Pro to make it out of the group. I mean, lately they've shown to be in the top 4 teams in the world. They've had a great 2015. You know, they've taken titles, so you know I have full confidence in them to win this group stage. You know, I wouldn't worry too much about VP. Most of the ambiguity is concerning who will make the second spot and make it to the round of 8. So look at the first team, which is NIP. They've had really good results, but they've been like all over the board. And you know, one day they look indomitable beating TSM online, and then the next day they lose to Hellraisers, and then make it close with the Swedish mixed team like Greyface. I mean, it's really hard to see, you know, NIP in their worst shape ever in their career. And this lineup really is like a ticking time bomb. Everyone knows sooner or later they won't exist. And although they have the skill, talent, experience, and communication of a veteran lineup, they lose on the tactical side and playing to the meta of the game. You know, they've tried changing this time and time again. They switch spots, players playing different particular spots, and they play different weapons. And you know, there's so many different styles that they're trying to pull in. But you know, I feel like this will be the first time they might not make it out of the groups, and they'll show their worst major performance. I mean, with all my heart, I believe they should make it out of the group. My brain is just telling my heart otherwise. You know, those bad results, bad strategies, and inconsistency that plague this lineup really put a huge question mark over them. So I wouldn't count them to be my second, like 100%, but you know, I feel like if they bring the magic, they have a really good chance, you know. As for Titan, though, I mean, they've shown to be quite a fearful lineup. They're progressing really nicely and breaking into arguably the top 10 teams in the world with their decent online results. I mean, they can definitely beat NIP. They just had an ESEA match where they beat NIP in overtime on Dust 2. So, you know, they have the ability to do it. They have the players to do it. But this all depends on whether they come out to perform. I mean, this lineup is a very young lineup, and they can become a great lineup again. But, I mean, arguably, if their core doesn't work, then that can be their downfall. Because they really need Shocks, RPK, Smiths, and Existence to all show up at their roles. They need Shocks to just clutch and just be like their star player for sure. Smiths needs to do some of the greatest sniping that he's ever done in his career. RPK just really needs to do his role. He doesn't really need to like, you know, show up and do 3Ks and everything. He just needs to get his 1 frag around or 2 frags around. That's all he needs to do. And Existence, I mean, yeah, fragging is important, but for me, if he can really pull apart the enemy, because he is one of the best in-game leaders, I would have to say that for sure, he can make that team go so far. So, yeah, I mean, After all, 4 out of the 5 players in this same sort of lineup on Titan have only made it out of groups once together, and that was when they were in very games. As Titan, they failed to do so. I mean, Shocks and Smiths are great players who have won a major, but I mean, that was with a different core, which was envious, and they have like that changes a lot of things. I mean, if you're just the sort of pseudo sniper, which is Smiths in Envious, and like you got Shocks who's playing the entry fragger. I mean, they're playing kind of completely different roles in this team. I mean, Smiths is still a sniper, but he's more like the dedicated sniper, and Shocks is more like the third or second man in on the sites now. He's not the entry fragger, so I mean, they're playing completely different roles to what they were on Envious, so that changes a lot. And they don't have the core to really fall back on in Happy or Kiyoshima or NBK to really back them up and make their performances strong. So, I mean, like I said, at the end of the day, if they bring their best, they can make it out of the group and even look scary doing it, but it relies on them playing their best and probably their opponents playing their worst. Lastly is Liquid. Now, before you rain down all the NA jokes and, that this false belief that I think that Liquid can make it, understand that this lineup is very new. This is the second LAN together ever, right? With Hiko, that is, the Hiko lineup. I feel though that like Hiko has somehow made this lineup a little bit more efficient. It's either through his experience or his skill or even the fact that he's doing his role as intended, which has helped make the team better. I would have to say that, off online results, they look to be the number one North American team. I mean, they're topping Face It and ESEA ladders in their region with a superior record to Cloud9. Like hands down, they've beaten Cloud9 a whole bunch of times. They're amazing, right? This team is probably the number one NA team. Now, if they play their best, I most certainly think they have a shot at making it out of the groups, especially if Titan and Nip, who are quite shaky lately, um, you know, don't play their best. And considering they took it to 3 maps with Fnatic at their last LAN and almost won the series, like they had a really good shot at winning this. They had really close score lines, really close rounds. I mean, they could turn that Liquid performance into a solid one. So, in summary, VP and Nip should top based off last major results and skill, but Titan and Liquid could both pull the cat out of the bag and show an amazing performance. And if they did so, it would be history breaking. It would be the first time that Nip would never make it out of groups, which is just crazy because Nip has always been seen as such like a consistent, crazy good team. Now, Group D is fairly easy to predict. I mean, it has Envious, Na'Vi, Dignitas, and CLG. As for the top two to make it out of this group, without a doubt, it should be Na'Vi and Envy topping the group. I mean, by far they're the more experienced and skilled lineups, and they're leagues or even miles ahead of their opponents in terms of skill, strategy, and just overall like team composition. I can't explain it, but I mean, these lineups have like everything down. Whether that be because they have a better map pool, or better online results, or more skill, or just they have like the most consistent sniper in the world, which like I would have to say Guardian and KennyS really would be. They're the two best snipers in the world, which really does change a lot to your team. I mean, Envy have shown to be possibly the best French lineup that we've ever seen in this game. I mean, they're so young. They're only a month old when they made it to top two at Cologne. I mean, now we're moving into like the 3 month period where you expect the lineup to be like building their portfolio, having like really good results, having a good map pool. So it's amazing to really see the potential that Envious has for the future. And, I can only see like a bright and a crazy Envy showing up at this major with like their sick online performances, their past results at LANs, the titles that they've picked up with this new lineup. But with that being said, I mean, this is a best of one group stage, for all these matches. And I mean, CLG, they're a team that has beaten good-looking lineups like Fnatic in the past, at like Katowice, for instance, in a best of one on Mirage. And I mean, Dignitas, they've always been a great team, arguably either just on the fringe of the top 10 or just at the bottom of it. They have really good online results under their belt. But they're a new lineup, and losing Schneider was a huge loss. I mean, he's such a skilled player. Even when he's playing on Hellraisers right now as a stand-in, he's towards the top of the scoreboard. So I mean, because of this, they might lack like coordination because they really did build like a really different team around when they had Schneider in the roster. And I mean, let's be honest, they don't really have the skill needed to upset their opponents. Yes, AZ and Pimp are like crazy good players in their own right, but I mean, Kirby and MSL and Freeze just they don't look like they're top tier players, and because of that, at the end of the day, I fully expect Na'Vi and Envy to make it out. I mean, mainly due to the results of CLG looking poor within their region, and Dignitas really is too new of a lineup for me to count on. So yeah, that's my thoughts about basically how the major should progress. It'll be really good to see Cluj-Napoca. Dreamhack runs some of the best events out, and yeah, I'll even make a video about probably the storylines that will occur within this tournament, and that'll be based on how this group stage progresses. So watch out for my next video. Also, part 2 of the history of Cloud9 will be up very, very soon. So thanks for watching. That's it.